Every year, we hear heartbreaking stories about species vanishing forever. While extinction might seem like an ancient tale of dinosaurs and mammoths, it's still happening today, and at an alarming rate. Unlike the creatures lost millions of years ago, many recent extinctions are tied directly to human actions: deforestation, pollution, hunting, and climate change. In today's video, we're diving into the stories of 10 animals that have gone extinct in recent history. These aren't just names on a list, they're vibrant species that once thrived on our planet, each with unique roles in their ecosystems. By exploring their stories, we'll uncover the harsh reality of what humanity has lost, and what we can still save. The baiji, often referred to as the goddess of the Yangtze, wasn't just another species of dolphin, it was a living piece of history. With a lineage stretching back over 20 million years, this freshwater dolphin was perfectly adapted to life in China's longest river, the Yangtze. Its long, narrow snout allowed it to hunt fish in the murky waters, while its nearly blind eyes hinted at an evolutionary trade-off, relying more on echolocation than vision to navigate and hunt. Despite its incredible adaptability, the baiji couldn't survive the rapid changes brought about by industrialization and human encroachment. During the mid-20th century, the Yangtze River transformed from a natural wonder into a bustling hub of human activity. Factories lined its shores, pouring pollutants into the water, while massive dams altered the river's flow. Overfishing depleted the baiji's primary food sources, and increased river traffic brought constant noise and collisions with boats. As human activity intensified, sightings of this graceful creature grew rarer. By the 1980s, it was already critically endangered. Conservation efforts in the 1990s sought to save the baiji, but they were too little, too late. A dramatic expedition in 2006, involving scientists from around the world, scoured the Yangtze for signs of the baiji. They used advanced sonar equipment and spent weeks searching, but the results were devastating: no baiji was found. Although there were occasional unconfirmed sightings afterward, the species was declared functionally extinct, meaning even if a few individuals remained, they couldn't sustain a viable population. The Pinta Island Tortoise, scientifically known as Chelonoidis abingdonii, was a subspecies of the Galapagos giant tortoise that once thrived on the lush Pinta Island in the Galapagos archipelago. These massive, slow-moving reptiles were evolutionary marvels, perfectly adapted to their unique environment. With their ability to survive for months without food or water, they were the ultimate symbol of resilience. But resilience alone couldn't save them from the devastating impacts of human activity and invasive species. The story of the Pinta Island tortoise is deeply tied to the history of exploitation in the Galapagos Islands. In the 18th and 19th centuries, whalers and pirates frequented the region, taking thousands of tortoises aboard their ships as a source of fresh meat. These tortoises could survive for long periods in ship holds without food or water, making them an ideal resource for sailors, but this convenience came at a steep cost. The population of Pinta Island tortoises, along with other subspecies, began to plummet. Adding to the destruction, humans introduced invasive species like goats to the islands. On Pinta Island, goats multiplied rapidly, stripping the vegetation that the tortoises relied on for food. By the mid-20th century, the Pinta Island tortoise was thought to be extinct, until a surprising discovery was made in 1971. A single male tortoise was found on Pinta Island, surviving against all odds. This lone survivor was named Lonesome George, and he quickly became a global icon for conservation. George was transported to the Charles Darwin Research Station on Santa Cruz Island, where he lived for over 40 years. Conservationists hoped to save his subspecies by breeding him with females from closely related tortoise populations. Unfortunately, despite numerous attempts, none of the eggs produced were viable. In 2012, Lonesome George passed away, marking the official extinction of the Pinta Island tortoise. His death was met with an outpouring of grief worldwide, as it symbolized the irreversible loss of an entire lineage of life. The Spix's macaw, Cyanopsida spixii, often called the blue bird of Brazil, captured hearts with its stunning sky blue feathers and piercing, soulful eyes. Native to the riparian woodlands of the Rio São Francisco in Brazil, this small parrot was as elusive as it was beautiful. Sadly, its breathtaking appearance made it a target for poachers, while deforestation in its native habitat sealed its tragic fate. For centuries, the Spix's macaw thrived in the carabira trees that dotted its habitat. These trees provided shelter, food, and nesting sites for the species. But as agriculture expanded, vast stretches of the woodlands were cleared to make way for cattle pastures and farmland. This relentless deforestation fragmented the macaw's habitat, leaving it vulnerable to starvation and predation. Compounding this destruction was the illegal pet trade, which saw Spix's macaws captured and sold for staggering sums, prized for their rarity and beauty. By the mid-20th century, the species was on the brink of extinction. The last known wild Spix's macaw, a solitary male, was discovered in the 1980s. Desperately alone, this bird's plight became a rallying cry for conservationists. Despite efforts to pair him with a female from captivity, the attempt failed, and in 2000, the last wild Spix's macaw vanished, marking the species' extinction in the wild. The disappearance of the Spix's macaw sparked outrage and determination among conservationists worldwide. Captive populations existed, but their numbers were critically low, and breeding programs faced challenges due to inbreeding and limited genetic diversity. Organizations like the Association for the Conservation of Threatened Parrots, ACTP, stepped in, working tirelessly to save the species. Over decades, careful breeding programs increased the number of captive Spix's macaws, bringing the population to nearly 200 individuals by the 2020s. In a monumental step for conservation, efforts began to reintroduce the species to its native habitat. In 2021, a group of Spix's macaws was released into a protected area in Brazil. The reintroduction involved extensive preparation, including restoring parts of the bird's lost habitat and educating local communities to ensure their protection. Though the outcome remains uncertain, this project represents a beacon of hope in the fight against extinction. The story of the Spix's macaw is both heartbreaking and inspiring. It underscores the devastating impact of human greed and environmental destruction but also highlights the resilience of life and the power of global collaboration. The Spix's macaw may have vanished from the wild for over 2 decades, but through sheer determination, it is clawing its way back, reminding us of nature's ability to recover when given a fighting chance. The golden toad, Incilius peregrines, was once a glittering gem of Costa Rica's Monteverde cloud forest. Known for its striking, almost otherworldly appearance, males were a vibrant, shiny orange, standing out starkly against the lush green backdrop of their environment. These small, amphibious creatures were first discovered in 1966 and quickly became a symbol of the incredible biodiversity found in tropical rainforests. Yet, within just a few decades, the golden toad would go from a scientific marvel to a tragic emblem of the devastating effects of climate change and habitat degradation. Living exclusively in the high-altitude cloud forests of Monteverde, the golden toad depended on the region's unique climate, constant mist, high humidity, and regular rainfall. This delicate ecosystem created ideal conditions for the species to thrive, particularly during their brief and synchronized mating season. Each year, hundreds of golden toads would emerge from their burrows to congregate in shallow pools, turning the forest floor into a dazzling spectacle of orange. However, this incredible display would soon be lost forever. By the late 1980s, populations of the golden toad began to collapse at an alarming rate. In 1987, researchers observed more than 1,500 individuals in breeding pools. The following year, that number plummeted to just 10. By 1989, the species had vanished entirely. Scientists were baffled. How could such a robust population disappear so quickly? As researchers delved deeper, they uncovered a perfect storm of factors that had sealed the golden toad's fate. One of the most significant culprits was climate change. Rising global temperatures altered the delicate balance of Monteverde's cloud forest ecosystem. The mist that once blanketed the forest began to retreat, reducing humidity levels and drying out the breeding pools essential for the golden toad's reproduction. Without suitable conditions to lay their eggs, the population couldn't sustain itself. Compounding this climate crisis was the emergence of a deadly fungal disease, chytridiomycosis, which swept through amphibian populations worldwide during the same period. Caused by the chytrid fungus, Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis, this disease attacks the skin of amphibians, impairing their ability to absorb water and electrolytes. The golden toad, already weakened by habitat changes, was particularly vulnerable to this devastating pathogen. The extinction of the golden toad in such a short time sent shockwaves through the scientific community. It was one of the first widely publicized examples of an animal species being wiped out by climate change, serving as a grim warning of what lies ahead for countless other species in similar habitats. Amphibians, in particular, are considered canaries in the coal mine for environmental health. Their rapid decline signaled deeper issues affecting entire ecosystems. The Western Black Rhinoceros, Diceros bicornis longips, a subspecies of the black rhino, once roamed the savannas and woodlands of West Africa in significant numbers. These majestic creatures were icons of resilience, adapted to survive in diverse habitats and characterized by their hooked upper lips, which they used to browse on shrubs and leaves. Yet, despite their evolutionary success, they couldn't withstand the relentless threat posed by human greed. The Western Black Rhinoceros serves as a devastating reminder of the catastrophic effects of poaching and habitat loss. For centuries, rhinos were hunted for their horns, which were highly valued in traditional medicine and as status symbols, particularly in parts of Asia and the Middle East. Myths about rhino horns' medicinal properties drove demand, despite scientific evidence proving it had no more healing power than keratin, the material found in human nails. This demand turned the Western Black Rhinoceros into a prime target for poachers, who slaughtered the animals in droves to harvest their prized horns. By the 20th century, hunting and poaching had decimated Western black rhino populations, reducing them to small, fragmented groups. Conservationists tried to step in, but protecting such a wide-ranging species across politically unstable regions proved challenging. Adding to the crisis, the rhino's habitat was being rapidly converted into agricultural land, squeezing the animals into smaller and more vulnerable pockets of territory. The final decades of the Western black rhinoceros were marked by desperation. By the 1980s, their numbers had dwindled to a few hundred individuals. Despite international bans on rhino horn trade and anti-poaching measures, enforcement was weak in many areas. Poachers, armed with advanced weaponry and operating with impunity, continued their slaughter. The rhinos, already struggling with declining genetic diversity due to their small population size, couldn't recover. The last confirmed sighting of a Western black rhinoceros in the wild occurred in 2006. Conservationists conducted exhaustive surveys in the years that followed, but no evidence of the subspecies could be found. In 2011, the Western black rhinoceros was officially declared extinct. The announcement was met with widespread outrage and sorrow, sparking debates about humanity's responsibility to protect the natural world. The Caribbean monk seal, Neomonychus tropicalis, affectionately called the sea wolf by early sailors, once thrived in the warm, turquoise waters of the Caribbean Sea, Gulf of Mexico, and parts of the Atlantic. As the only seal species native to the region, it was a symbol of the tropics' rich marine biodiversity. With a plump body covered in sleek gray or brown fur and an endearing face with large, expressive eyes, the Caribbean monk seal was a creature of both ecological and aesthetic significance. Yet, within centuries of human contact, this serene marine mammal was driven to extinction, becoming one of the ocean's most tragic losses. When European explorers arrived in the Caribbean in the late 15th century, the monk seal's fate was set on a dangerous path. These seals were easy targets for hunters. Non-aggressive and curious by nature, they would approach humans rather than flee, making them vulnerable to mass slaughter. Hunters prized the seals for their blubber, which was rendered into oil, and their skins, which were used for leather. Entire colonies were wiped out in a matter of hours. By the 19th century, the monk seal population was already in steep decline. Overhunting wasn't the only threat they faced. The seals relied on undisturbed sandy beaches and coastal caves for resting, mating, and rearing their pups. As human settlements expanded, these critical habitats were destroyed or disturbed. Coastal development, combined with the increasing presence of tourists and fishermen, left the seals with fewer safe places to thrive. The Caribbean monk seal's decline was further exacerbated by overfishing. The species primarily fed on fish and crustaceans, but as humans overexploited these resources, the seals found it increasingly difficult to find food. Competition with humans for the region's diminishing marine bounty placed additional stress on their already dwindling numbers. By the 20th century, sightings of the Caribbean monk seal became increasingly rare. Conservation awareness was minimal, and no significant measures were taken to protect the species. The last confirmed sighting occurred in 1952 off the coast of Jamaica, and despite extensive surveys in the decades that followed, no evidence of surviving individuals was found. In 2008, the Caribbean monk seal was officially declared extinct, marking the first modern extinction of a marine mammal due to human activity. The dusky seaside sparrow, Amaspiza nigrescens, was once a familiar presence in the salt marshes along the eastern coast of Florida. This small bird, characterized by its dark plumage and distinctive buzzy song, was a subspecies of the seaside sparrow, uniquely adapted to the brackish marshes of Merritt Island and the St. Johns River. Its story is one of beauty, vulnerability, and, ultimately, irreversible loss, serving as a poignant reminder of how fragile and interconnected ecosystems truly are. For centuries, the dusky seaside sparrow thrived in the region's coastal marshlands. The bird was perfectly suited to this environment, feeding on insects and nesting in the tall grasses that grew abundantly in the wetlands. However, as human populations expanded in the mid-20th century, the bird's habitat began to disappear. Large-scale projects to drain the marshlands for agriculture and development destroyed vast swaths of its home. This habitat loss was exacerbated by mosquito control efforts in the 1940s, which involved flooding areas of the marsh to kill mosquito larvae. These measures effectively drowned the dusky seaside sparrows' nesting sites, drastically reducing their population. By the 1960s, the subspecies had entered a rapid decline. Conservationists raised alarms, but their warnings went largely unheeded. In 1973, the dusky seaside sparrow was officially listed as an endangered species, but efforts to save it came too late. Habitat restoration projects were initiated, but the bird's population was already critically low, with only a handful of individuals remaining. Desperate to save the subspecies, conservationists attempted to breed the remaining dusky seaside sparrows in captivity. However, all surviving individuals were male, making natural reproduction impossible. Efforts to hybridize them with other seaside sparrow subspecies were met with controversy and skepticism. Many questioned whether such hybrids could truly preserve the genetic identity of the dusky seaside sparrow. The last known wild dusky seaside sparrow, named Orange Band, was observed in the early 1980s on the St. John's National Wildlife Refuge. By this time, it had become a solitary symbol of a vanishing world. In 1987, the final individual, kept in captivity at the Walt Disney World Resort, died. With its passing, the dusky seaside sparrow was declared extinct, leaving behind a legacy of loss and regret. The Pyrenean ibex, Capra pyrenaica, a subspecies of the Spanish ibex, once roamed the rugged mountains of the Pyrenees, straddling the border between France and Spain. Known for its impressive curved horns and remarkable agility, the Pyrenean ibex was a symbol of the untamed beauty of its alpine home. However, overhunting, habitat loss, and competition with livestock drove this subspecies to extinction. Its story, however, took an extraordinary turn in the early 21st century, making it the first species in history to be de-extinct, albeit briefly. Historically, the Pyrenean ibex thrived in the mountainous regions, where it was well adapted to the rocky terrain and harsh climate. It played a crucial role in its ecosystem, grazing on vegetation and helping to maintain the balance of plant life. But human activities disrupted this equilibrium. Over centuries, intensive hunting for the ibex's meat and horns decimated its population. By the 19th century, the subspecies was already in decline, and conservation efforts were minimal or non-existent. As their numbers dwindled, the ibex faced additional pressures from habitat encroachment. Expanding agricultural practices and the introduction of domestic livestock into the mountains created competition for food and space. Diseases carried by livestock also took a toll on the already vulnerable ibex population. By the late 20th century, only a small group of Pyrenean ibex remained in the wild, confined to the Ordesa National Park in Spain. The final blow came in the 1990s. Despite conservationists' attempts to protect the remaining individuals, their numbers continued to decline due to inbreeding, which weakened the population's genetic diversity. In 2000, the last known Pyrenean ibex, a female named Celia, was found dead, her body crushed beneath a fallen tree. With her death, the subspecies was declared extinct. The Japanese river otter, Lutra japonica, was once a beloved and iconic creature of Japan's river systems, evoking admiration for its playful nature and sleek, streamlined body. A subspecies of the Eurasian otter, it was specially adapted to the freshwater habitats of Japan's rivers, lakes, and coastal regions. Known for its dexterous swimming abilities, sharp hunting skills, and curious personality, the Japanese river otter became a symbol of the country's rich natural heritage. Yet, by the 1970s, this fascinating animal vanished from the wild, leaving behind only memories and questions about the ecological consequences of its loss. Historically, the Japanese river otter was found across the Japanese archipelago, where it thrived in the clean, cold waters of rivers and coastal streams. The otters played an important role in their ecosystems by controlling fish populations, thus helping to maintain the balance of aquatic life. These otters were highly social animals, often living in small family groups, and were known for their intelligence and adaptability. Their playful nature, often seen in their activities such as sliding down riverbanks or floating on their backs, made them a favorite among the local population. However, as Japan industrialized in the 19th and 20th centuries, the Japanese river otter's life began to change dramatically. Urbanization and industrial development brought about massive changes to the rivers and ecosystems that the otters relied on. Pollution from factories and increased agricultural runoff devastated their freshwater habitats. Water quality deteriorated, fish populations dwindled, and the otters found it increasingly difficult to find food. Along with habitat destruction, hunting posed an additional threat to the otters. In the early 1900s, the demand for fur led to the hunting of river otters, though this was not the primary cause of their decline. Over time, the destruction of the otter's habitat was the key factor driving them toward extinction. Despite their strong connection to Japan's cultural and natural landscape, there was little governmental action to protect the species, and no serious conservation efforts were made until it was too late. By the 1960s, sightings of the Japanese River Otter had become increasingly rare. Locals who once marveled at the otter's antics now reported that they had vanished from many of the rivers they had once frequented. By the early 1970s, the last confirmed sighting of a Japanese river otter was reported in the wild. The species was officially declared extinct by the Japanese government in 2012, though many experts believe it had actually disappeared much earlier. The Formosan clouded leopard, Neophelus nebulosa brachyura, was once a mystical and elusive predator that roamed the dense forests of Taiwan. Revered for its striking appearance and elusive behavior, the Formosan clouded leopard was one of the island's most iconic animals. With its cloud-like spots and long, luxurious tail, this subspecies of the clouded leopard was an extraordinary sight, but one that few people ever witnessed. Sadly, the Formosan clouded leopard disappeared from the wild in the mid-20th century, leaving behind only myths, memories, and unanswered questions about its fate. Today, it remains a symbol of Taiwan's rich natural heritage and a tragic reminder of how fragile species can be when they are pushed to the brink of extinction. Clouded leopards, in general, are known for their distinctive appearance, featuring large, irregularly shaped cloud-like spots and a long, thick tail that aids them in balancing as they navigate the forest canopy. The Formosan clouded leopard, a smaller subspecies, was no exception. It was adapted to Taiwan's mountainous forests, where it hunted small to medium-sized prey, such as deer, wild boar, and various smaller mammals. The clouded leopard was also an excellent climber, often seen in the trees where it would ambush prey or seek refuge. The Formosan clouded leopard was once distributed throughout Taiwan, inhabiting the island's dense, remote forests. However, its existence was already under threat by the early 20th century due to human encroachment. As Taiwan modernized, forests were cleared for agriculture and development. Logging and deforestation had a significant impact on the clouded leopard's habitat, reducing the availability of food and shelter. Furthermore, the growing human population brought about increased hunting and poaching, as the leopard's pelts were valuable in the illegal wildlife trade. Despite the challenges, the Formosan clouded leopard managed to survive in the most remote and inaccessible parts of Taiwan's mountainous interior for some time. Yet, as deforestation and human activity spread, its population became fragmented, and the remaining leopards were confined to smaller pockets of forest. By the 1950s, sightings of the leopard became increasingly rare, and the government and local communities began to recognize that the species was in danger of disappearing altogether. By the 1970s, the Formosan clouded leopard was declared functionally extinct in the wild, with no confirmed sightings for over a decade. However, there remained a glimmer of hope for the species, with various conservation groups and researchers suggesting that the clouded leopard could still exist in remote areas of the island. In the years following its presumed extinction, numerous attempts were made to locate any remaining individuals. Scientists and wildlife enthusiasts launched expeditions into Taiwan's forests, relying on camera traps and local reports to track the elusive predator. Despite the efforts, no evidence was found to confirm the existence of the Formosan clouded leopard after 1983. In 1996, the Formosan clouded leopard was officially declared extinct by the Taiwanese government. This declaration came after several failed attempts to find the animal, despite ongoing reports from local residents who claimed to have seen the leopard in the wild. However, these sightings were unverified, and the elusive nature of the species made it difficult to determine whether they were genuine encounters or merely a product of myth. These stories of recent extinctions aren't just tales of loss, they're warnings. Each of these animals was a vital part of its ecosystem, and their disappearance leaves ripples that affect us all. But it's not too late to act. By protecting endangered species, preserving habitats, and supporting conservation efforts, we can prevent other animals from joining this tragic list. Which of these extinctions shocked you the most? Or do you know of other animals whose stories deserve to be told? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating and eye-opening stories. Together, we can make a difference for the species still fighting for survival.